Hello chip dippers and welcome back to the Retro Recipes restaurant. We have a special recipode on the menu today. So when we converted those Worms cutscenes that we'd found into HD, there was a ton of interest, including from Puppyfractic, in finding out how we'd actually done it. Hey babe.
Yeah?
Do you want to see how I got Worms in HD?
I'm trying to make my lunch.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, well, a little bit of interest. So I'm today going to hand you over to the capable mouse-clicking hands, of Matt Ricardo. But don't worry, I'll be standing just out of shot to make sure that he doesn't make any puns or dad jokes that are quite as wonderful as mine. And I'll also check back in with you in a few minutes to show the results of that contest that we ran to see who has won these little items from the Team17 treasure trove, as well as that special 3D printed worm. For now though, welcome to Puppyfractic's Retro Recipes.
Welcome.
Hello Chip Dippers, I am Matt Ricardo.
There's the scenes.
Can we load this into LightWave?
Yeah, we can.
He got hold of the original Team17 hard drives and they got them booted up and got access to them and found all of the original Worms cutscenes. So we have a look in the Worms directory. The usual animation is actually made up from 6 shots. And sometimes a shot is longer than you see in one bit, and they basically snip it up and use later bits of it after other shots. So if we have a look at all files, these are the original files from the Amiga. So this is the modern version of the missile. Now the shot where he runs away, in fact I think this shot as well actually. So this is all real, we're flying through 3D, this one, yeah. So this shot, the worm is basically running on a background plate. This is like a rear projection. So there's a big rectangle with a picture painted on it. But there was lots of this. When we loaded up the scenes, and I started picking through them, I was emailing Perifractic over and over saying, you know, have a look at this, and this is exciting, and this looks weird. And yeah, this shot is basically just a back projection with a worm running at it. But if we have a look at this scene, for example, so I'm going to load this up and it tells me it's a really old scene. Do you want to make a copy? And I won't for speed reasons. So this is what I actually started to see every time I loaded up one of the original scenes. Now it is there. If we switch to VPR, this is the rendering viewport. This is the scene, and because these used to render out a pixel thickness, which on 644/80 or below was plenty. But of course you render them up in a modern resolution and you can see right through them. 1 pixel is nothing nowadays. And obviously you can straight away see all of the original geometry issues, like the armpits, the famous armpits. The eyes are actually cut into the worm's head. So this is all a single object, if I recall. These are all of the objects and all of their keyframes. So all of these are currently shown as boxes. So let's actually select everything and say show as textured shaded solid wireframe. So this is a textured wireframe, and if we just switch to a textured shot. So you can see here there's this thing, this was what we call the limited range. And so even though we've got this much frame, 644/80, we're actually only rendering out a widescreen look. So in the game we would have seen bars top and bottom on a 4x3 screen. So we can scrub through this fairly quickly. You know, I mean, it should play in real time. To get these into what we called the modern versions, which was where we turned it into HD and we replaced objects with better objects and fixed the worm models and things like that. That was I mean, that was a huge undertaking. I mean, by Saturday night, I'd already loaded in a worm model and sent a picture of that over to Perifractic, and I had, by Sunday morning or Sunday lunchtime, I think, managed to get the scenes in and rendering, and then it was just a case of queuing them up and hitting the go, and that took no time. That was like a day, and we were done. You had all these folders like animals and computer, and they're all just objects of a particular type. So in furniture there is a coffee table, but the main one was worms, and this was highlighted in Perifractic's original video, and everyone wanted to know it. That's what it's loaded in. I think this is one of the dead worms from the Uzi scene. That's actually loaded. That's quite good actually, because I've tried a couple of different times to load that with different versions. Now that worm that was in the Uzi animation was worm meta 2, so if we load him up, this is the actual worm in a sort of T-pose that was used in the Uzi animation. It's the exact same file. Now, as I say, the problem, you can see things like the armpits, and it's because these were created using a very old system called Metaballs. And nowadays, we use a different system for smoothing out organic shapes like this. This was what we started with. So what I'll do is I'll show you the recreated version. So you can see that this looks completely different. It's got curves and dots. So if we have a look here, for example, you can see that this is actually two straight lines. That's not a curve. It looks curved when you see it from a distance or when it's moving, but it's actually just a low polygon object. If we have a look at the remake object, so this is a curve. It's completely curved, and it's infinitely curved. In fact, it has no polygon resolution as such, but it's actually just made up from that object. So this was the low polygon version that we started with, and when we hit the tab key in LightWave, it smooths these sharp edges out into curves, and it turns it into what we call a subdivision object. A lot of the surfaces, Perifractic mentions this in his original video. So yeah, this has already been saved and fixed, but they were coming in far too shiny. And that isn't how they looked in the original animation. It was just that over the years, the way that objects are stored and the surfaces on these objects are stored has changed, and so some of the information is lost in translation, and it just did the best it could. So we went from that to that, which in the software, when you actually render up with lights on it and a sky plane and things like that, looks a lot more like the original animation. So this was the original Uzi model, and there's not a lot of detail to it, and all it had was a reflection map that we just didn't load because it won't matter for this. So this was an object on a free 3D model site, and I just got it and sized it and lined it up to the original. The hand was poking through the gun, so I could go in and I could fix every hand, or I could fix one gun, and it fixes the problem for itself. So yeah, I just moved the gun slightly off center in that axis, and it made for a better looking sequence. This is pine_tree, which is basically the same as pine.tree. So that's the tree, and you can see here, if we just zoom in, it's literally just some lines. So we switched it out for this, which is 345,000 polygons. And if we get in a little bit closer to this, like just one polygon leaf. So this one leaf has a sort of cross section of pine needles drawn on it, and they're on both sides. And then this green section is transparent later on. It's made transparent later on. I added these little stickly branch things to it so that when I stuck this into the ground, there was just a little bit of an edge to the grass. And so there we go. So that's the sort of renovation on the objects that we did. And then as far as the scenes themselves go, so this is in essence the HD frame. And we could have just rendered that up and it would have looked clean. So for this, the mountain range I had this image here, which is 6854 pixels wide, and it's got transparency on the top. And what I do is I project that onto a ring, and then I use this as an alpha image. So where it's white, it's transparent; where it's black, it's not. So all the mountains appear, and all the bits above the mountains disappear. And the image itself has been painted so that it's seamless. So there's no sudden edge to it. If we zoom all the way out, you'll see that that's the actual plot of land. It's just a rectangular bit of land. It's a little sort of ramp, and it's the bit where the missile is chasing the worm in the other animation, and he does the wall of death around it and then runs back down there. But that is the ring of mountains, and outside of the ring of mountains is some sky, and it's just projected onto the inside of a ball. And basically you load that in. It's so big and so tall that you can load it in around any object, and it doesn't matter where you look, you'll always see sky and mountains and all of that. So this is it playing in real time. Now remember that worm object. So you can see that the gun being moved over has fixed the arm, and I've actually gone in and tweaked a few of the bones in a lot of these animations. If we rotate his arm, you can see if you go too far, it still can tear and it can deform and it can look wrong. But we could have him hold the gun maybe from up the top there, which would be dangerous with all those bullet shells flying out, but you know. And if we just set that in place, so now he's rather stupidly holding the gun from the wrong part. Here is the worm seen from a perspective view. So you can see there's all these bones down the tail, and if I wanted to, I could actually select a few, and then we can start turning them all at once. Oh, you can snap. So yeah, there was a lot of control put into these, because basically they built one object and just animated it however they needed. The rendering on this wasn't too bad. I mean, by going up to, you know, HD and whatnot, it did increase the render times a lot. But if we can just do a test now. So this is going in and calculating all of the meshes first, and then it renders it up. And that's just like the first pass, and then it goes in and it cleans up all the rough edges and anti-aliases the image and what have you. There we go. So that was 26 seconds. It was still faster than the original Amiga version. It's in HD. I think it looks better.
Hello, us again. Just a quick interlude to let you know those cutscenes actually took Matt 4 overclocked high-end PCs, yes, running overnight. She's tired just thinking about it. A sort of render farm, and he was telling me it actually made his house extremely hot. But if you're looking for not high-end PCs, but high-end PCBs, then I recommend PCBWay! They've got a special on right now. You can get PCBs for only $30 for up to 20 of them, and free shipping. And as Matt knows, PCB stands for Poor Computer Burnout. Doesn't it? Well, either way, back to you, Matt.
The flamethrower animation. This is the flamethrower from one of the older Aliens games. One of those that have been released as a free download. For this gun, I actually put in about 1,000 slices all along the length of the gun, so that I could put bones in it and bend them down, and there wouldn't be any flat edges to worry about. This I didn't change. I actually was pleasantly surprised by how well this worked for what it is. It's an orange cone that's twirled around pointing at the camera. It's ridiculously simple, but it works really, really well. So I like the look of it, and so I kept it. This is the teleport scene. Now, we were actually missing 2 shots in this animation, and there's 2 shots there, and I couldn't find scene files for them on the drives. So we had to lose them in the re-render and lose them in the modern version. This is the real reflections that I talked about. So this is the same binoculars model as was used in the original animations, but what I've done is I've applied that smoothing technique, that subdivision surfaces, and it's allowed it to be rounded off, and it's put more detail in instead of some sharp edges and curves. We're using real reflections so that it actually points back over the, because there's a minefield basically behind the camera, and so that's what it's seeing from that point of view, which is this shot here. In looking at this, I noticed that it said latrine. So this is the idea, and then it would cut into the blueprint sequence as the communicator. Now that's a problem with how LightWave interprets transparent objects with fog. You see here, this section down here, all the fog has disappeared on this transparent object. Looking at this, I wish I'd painted that out manually. I could have gone in and Photoshop that to fix it. And again, this is that same landscape object from all the other animations. We're just looking at it from a different point of view. This uses a sort of almost a desert type scene with a river running through it and a bridge. And one of the things that I'd noticed in the original is that when the camera looks up the river, it just ends. It's a completely straight piece of river with no curves or bends. And here I've actually curved the river around now, and it's a bit more involved in the landscape. With this, because I've increased the detail on the land had picked up some curves and some shape changes. So of course, the first time I rendered this out thinking it was good, all the worms are floating across the land thinking that they're on the flat. And so I had to go in and hand position their height so that they stick back onto the ground across that sequence. It actually curves, that edge is curved over there. Of this, who's this joke? There you go, that shot there. So that's where the river, you just saw straight up to nothing, and it just went to white. So I've put a little bit of curve in there. So who's this guy? Dunno.
Who's this guy? Dunno.
So there we go.
There we go indeed, and now it's the exciting moment where we find out which of you won the items from Chris Blythe and Team 17. But first, a huge thank you to Matt Ricardo for taking us through all of that, and of course to Chris for giving both of us worms. And now it's over to Puppyfractic and the Retro Recipes Randomizer. And this, of course, is a little program I wrote, especially to be started by a puppy.
That's it. Wait. Yes.
And yes, she has pressed the any key, wherever that is.
Yes.
So this waits a few seconds randomly and then sends an HTTP post command to my Wi-Fi robot finger. And that then clicks start on the raffle draw. Good luck, everybody. And congratulations to Alien Space. I thought it said Alien Spice for a minute. Well, I'll get Alien's email just to let him or her know to watch this video, but I won't spoil the surprise in that email. Big thanks to everyone who entered, and I'm sorry if you didn't win. I wish everybody could have, but make sure you are subscribed because we are going to have a huge Team 17 contest coming very soon. Stay tuned. You want a worm? Ready for the wormy? There you go. All right. Well, that's it from us for today, but I will be back as before with more wormy and unwormy content. I hope you've enjoyed this little trip of seeing how we made that trip down Wormery Lane. I don't know about you, but knowing that we have worms here in HD just makes me all warm and fuzzy inside. Until next time, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, comment below, and cheerio. Got a perfectly good bed and she chooses to sleep on the floor.